What up, YouTube? How you guys doing today? Today, we got a great book for you. It's called Sparks of Genius. The 13 Thinking Tools of the World's Most Creative People. So you want to get creative? Use these tools. So what's the core concept of this book? Basically, it is that tools for creativity boost creativity. So if you use these tools to ignite your creativity, you will, through practice and wiring the right circuits in your brain, you will boost that creativity. So that's the promise of this book, and I think it delivers. So if you'll check it out, let's get into the theory. So what is creativity, right? It's when inner imagination meets outer experience. So your inner life, the illusions that you create in the mind, have to relate and interact with the models of external reality, right? The inner imagination expands the possibilities of the external world, right? The mind is capable of imagining things that aren't apparent in the world, right? Everything that exists in the world today that's man-made once existed in their minds, right? Like a book. A book comes to your mind first and then you put it down. A plane came to the idea, the imagining that they could fly is what made the Wright brothers, take flight. So that's a very simple way of saying that all creativity comes from imagination meeting experience. All right, so now let's get into the 13 tools. And really quickly, I'll just read a summary of the tools from the book. So the first tool is observing. Obviously, you need to see the world. You need to see what can be heard, thought, touched, seen, right? You have to observe the world. Next is the idea called imaging. It's written really small here so I can kind of remember. And that's the ability to recall to your mind your observations. The next idea is abstracting. Abstracting allows you to take complex reality and simplify it and pull out the general principles and general qualities of that reality into an abstract sphere of existence, right? Like abstract art. What does abstract art do? It takes the specifics and kind of gets rid of them, and then you just get these general shapes and patterns. So that's what abstracting is. Next, you have pattern recognition and pattern forming. So seeing the patterns and the regularities and the laws of mathematics and the universe and nature, right? That's pattern recognition. Pattern forming is creating new things out of those patterns that you recognize, right? Music, art, you're creating new patterns of interaction. So that's pattern recognition and pattern forming. Pattern forming is combining simple elements in unexpected ways. Analogizing is the next. The realization that two apparently different things share important properties or functions. Next is body thinking. The idea that you have to feel your ideas in your deep unconscious core. Your unconscious mind has to work on these ideas. The next is dimensional thinking, taking 2D objects and turning them into 3D and imagining things in three dimensions and higher. Next is modeling. So now we're getting into complex tools. Modeling involves combining these basic ideas, these basic tools together. So what modeling is pattern genres on the exemplar of earlier writers, right? That's if you're a poet, right? It's the ability to integrate and rely on primary tools and look at what other people are doing and kind of repeat that idea and repeat that process. The next one is transforming. It's also the ability to switch between these various tools, between observation, abstraction, pattern recognition, pattern forming, and just do them all in a fluid way. And synthesizing is similar to that. It's an integration of knowledge. So that's the basic 13 tools of creativity. I know I did them really quickly, but the point of this book is that you need to practice those tools, right? You need to practice abstracting. You need to practice looking at patterns, right? And start with the simple patterns, right? Like the sun rises and the sun sets. That's a pattern. It's repetitive. And then you ask yourself, why does the sun rise and sun set? Well, maybe it's because the sun and the earth are kind of circular, because it has to be a circle if it's going to happen over and over and over. Perhaps it's a square, but most likely, looking at the globe of the sun, the circle of the sun, you can theorize that the sun is at least a circle. Perhaps it's a sphere, right? So it's just, that's a very basic idea of pattern recognition. It's what our ancestors did for millions of years. But how to take action. So now we're going to get into 3 action steps into creativity, right? How do you get creative? What actions can you take to get creative? The first is, it's a big one, solve a problem. Almost all creativity stems from solving some problem. So you got to solve the problems of the world, or you got to solve the problems of your plot if you're working on a novel, or solve the problems of trying to make symphonic music, right? There are internal problems with any chaotic entity, which is what creativity is. It's the mixture of order and chaos, right? And you have to bring order out of the chaos. So that's one. Number 2 is use these tools consciously. So I would recommend you guys pick up the book if you guys want to really understand what these tools are, like observing, imaging, pattern recognition. All of those things, you have to use them consciously. And what I mean by that is, like, say you're working on a problem, right? You should be like, okay, I have my tool belt of creativity tools. Let me take out a tool right now and work on my project, right? What can I abstract out of my poems? What patterns do I see emerging in my poems? What creative things can I do in my poems? I'm a poet, so that's what I'm interested in. So use your tools constantly. Like, take a tool out, use it, replace it in the tool belt, and use that consciously. So that's number 2. And number 3 is use limits or constraints. You need to expand the possibilities first, but then you need to hone in on what you need. So you need divergent and convergent thinking in order to effectively create something. So use limits. Choose only a few ideas that you want to explore instead of like every idea in the world, because those few ideas will create creativity. You have to be creative when only working with 3 colors and you're painting, right? Or if you're working with a certain plot structure in your book and you're doing that. So these are the tools to boost creativity. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good one, guys.